state. We're breaking our families. We lead the nation in hospital closures. Let's expand Medicaid. Why are we ignoring it?
Let's go for another round, starting with Dr. Martin and then Councilman Smiley, about any other specific legislation that you'd like to address, whether you're critical of it or whether you're supportive of it.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of legislation that's been passed in recent sessions that attacks marginalized communities in this state. And, whether it's our immigrant communities, whether it's our religious minorities, whether it's the LGBTQ plus among us, we need to stand up and create a Tennessee that works for everyone. And that is a priority of mine. No matter what zip code you live in, no matter the color of your skin, no matter how much money you have in the bank, who you choose to love, what your native tongue is, Tennessee should be the land of opportunity for you. And when you are a governor and you allow that slate of hate legislation to come across your desk and you don't speak out against it, you are complicit in bullying. You are complicit in creating a narrative that some are higher or better than others. And that's not who we are, Tennessee.
Thank you. Councilman Smiley, again, the question is any other legislation specifically that you'd like to talk about, whether critical or supportive of?
You give me an opportunity to talk about the law. I appreciate you. So I'm going to take this time to talk about how we can affirm women in this state. Because a lot of times, the General Assembly spends a lot of time talking about they support women, yet in every opportunity they get, they draft legislation, they implement policies specifically targeting women. But let's talk about 81 cents. For every dollar a white male makes, a white female makes 81 cents. But that number decreases when you're talking about black and brown women. We can fix that in this state. There's a law called the Tennessee Equal Pay Act. That law is supposed to put women on the level playing field, allow women to sue bad acting employers. But the truth of the matter, it does nothing for women. If we're going to fix that law, we need to add punitive damage language in that, punitive damage provision language in that law, so give women a real opportunity to be paid their worth, to be paid the same amount as every single man. And that's the type of proactive thinking, proactive legislation that I will support. Thank you.
Next question, we'll start with Councilman Smiley and then go to Dr. Martin. The legislature did an interesting thing. On the one hand, they increased the amount of study and curriculum that you have on Black history, but at the same time, they allowed for curriculum and books to be removed from public libraries. How do you think, as governor if elected, you would balance these competing interests? Is it balanceable? And again, Councilman Smiley.
I'm going to tell you this. When I was elected to be a member of the Memphis City Council, I always heard that the wheels of government move slow. I didn't necessarily buy that. I wanted to make sure that I keep the number one role of government, which is to provide for the general welfare of people, at the forefront of my mind. So I went out to eat with every single member of our body. I went out to eat with the fundraising chair for the president I won't name that will soon go to jail. I went to eat with every single person so that I can understand their interests. The reason I'm having this conversation with each and every one of you is if we want to move our community forward, we have to know the people that we're working with. We have to make sure that the legislation that's coming before us, it truly represents every single person in this state. And my administration will do just that.
Thank you. Dr. Martin.
This governor has waged a war against public education, and I'm talking about politicizing school boards. I'm talking about taking away local authority. I'm talking about encouraging edits of libraries so that students aren't aware of the full breadth of knowledge that's available to them. I'm talking about firing teachers for teaching American history as it happened. You all, racism is embedded in our history. It's part of our present. And if we want to decrease its influence on our future, we have to teach our children about it. And so legislation that ties the hands of our educators, who are the content experts here, is the wrong approach. And I'm going to stand against that, continue to.
Thank you very much. And the next question also has to do with public education. I received word today from a local educator that there is a television report about Governor Lee being with the president of Hillsdale College, being very critical and in many cases insulting of teachers. Are you aware of this report, and what is your reaction? Dr. Martin and then Councilman Smiley.
Yeah, I've seen the blurb about the story from News Channel 5 in Nashville, but I have not read the full article. I'm aware that there were some disparaging comments made by someone in the governor's orbit that were recorded and subsequently broadcasted. Here's the deal. This goes back to what I was telling you. The governor is waging a war against public education. And, he seeks to defund it with illegal voucher programs. He seeks to change the focus of our schools from teaching our kids reading, writing, and arithmetic to teaching a radical ideology, and I'm talking about the Hillsdale curriculum. And, that's not the point of public education. That is not what it's there to do. It's there to buoy all of our communities. It's there to educate our kids. It's there to give them a path to a better tomorrow. And when I'm governor, we're gonna make that happen, and we're gonna defend our hardworking teachers who have been thrown to the wolves by this governor.
Thank you. Councilman Smiley?
Yeah, so I've seen the report, and I think I actually tweeted about it. Essentially what happened is Governor Lee is sitting on stage having a conversation with the president of Hillsdale, I believe, and essentially what the president of Hillsdale says is, he laughs, he said public teachers are the worst. They go to the worst schools, they're the worst educated, and Governor Lee sits there and nods his head. I don't think that's the sign of good leadership. If we truly value teachers in this state, we will stand up for them, not only when it comes time to implement policy, but when we have folks in our administration who speaks out against them, we send them packing. This governor does not care about children, because if he did, he would make sure we get guns out of our communities. This governor does not care about teachers, because if he did, he would give them a salary commensurate with their work. This governor intentionally belittles teachers, intentionally pays them less, and is intentional about devaluing them. But my administration will value each and every person that calls Tennessee home, especially teachers.
Thank you very much. We'll start with Councilman Smiley with this next one, and then Dr. Martin. This question is about marijuana legislation. 4 years ago, one of the candidates for governor, then Speaker Beth Harwell, had a platform that was pro-medical marijuana. Today, Delta-8 and hemp are legal, but THC is not. If you are governor, what proposals on marijuana and cannabis would you pursue? Councilman Smiley.
Okay, so this state, as it relates to teachers, as it relates to education, we are among the lowest as it relates to how much money we are using to fund education. The reason that I'm talking about that before I say anything else, we absolutely should be legalizing marijuana. If we look at what we're doing in the state, there are so many things that we can use those resources to fund, like public education. We can have a fully funded, high-performing public school system. Teachers can be and should be paid a salary commensurate with their work. With those resources that we make off of legalizing marijuana, we can do just that. In addition to that, we can create a healthcare fund so that those folks who are being turned around at the hospital can apply for the state for assistance.
Thank you very much, Dr. Martin.
Marijuana, legalize it, period. Let's talk about why. Colorado, a state with 1.5 million fewer people than we have here in Tennessee, over $2 billion of revenue, 400 million tax dollars collected on that regulated product. That's money we could use right here, like you said, for infrastructure, education, broadband, whatever we want. We're missing out on that income stream. Let's talk about the fact that we're locking up primarily black and brown Tennesseans for small drug offenses. We need to stop that practice. We need to take those law enforcement resources and redirect them where they can be better utilized. We need to take that drug market away from the cartels. Y'all, let's take that market away from them. And finally, as a physician, I can tell you that there are patients that I take care of who would benefit from access to cannabis, and I'm talking about PTSD and cancer patients and chronic pain patients, our veterans, our farmers. We could give our farmers another cash crop as well. There's so many reasons to do it. Let's make it happen.
Thank you very much. Thank you. You all alluded to this. You all alluded to this earlier in the conversation, and we'll start with Dr. Martin and then Councilman Smiley. What role should the government and universities have to reverse the decline in college attendance? Dr. Martin.
Yeah, so our goal with education is to put people on a path to success that's right for them. And I believe that we have a great system here in Tennessee with our 2- and 4-year college system with the Tennessee Promise. And I think it's great that we build on that. But I think we also need to recognize that college is incredibly expensive. That it puts, I'm still paying my college loans off. I'm 47 years old, right? So how do we give people options that allow them to prosper without all that debt? And I think in addition to 2- and 4-year college attendance, we need to invest in vocational training. And I've mentioned this before, but we need, so if folks don't want to go to college, they can come out with a trade or a skill that makes them competitive in the workforce and able to go out and support their families, support industry coming to their communities. And so, building on our TCAT system needs to be a priority.
Thank you very much, Councilman.
Well, I'm absolutely certain I will probably be paying for my student loans until the day I die. But, in all seriousness, I think the universities in this state should take a very active role in decreasing the amount it takes to go to school. If we look at, where we are and where we were years ago, the number of people enrolling in education, higher education, is significantly decreasing. But that is the sole reason, price is the sole reason people are not seeking higher education. We have to put people in a better position. And I tell people this all the time. The role of government and the role of universities should be to make sure we're level the playing field for every person that calls the state home. Right now, we're simply overpricing, pricing people out of this particular institution. We need to lower costs immediately. And if we do that, we'll see a significant increase in those individuals who attend higher education.
Thank you very much. The next question is also a two-parter having to do with gun violence and gun laws. We'll start with Councilman Smiley and then Dr. Martin. The first part is, how do you plan to address gun violence and improve Tennesseans or safeguard Tennesseans from mass shootings, especially in light of some mass shootings that have happened recently in Chattanooga? Dr. Martin.
Yeah, wow, what a timely question. So first of all, let's talk about gun laws in the state of Tennessee. You can not have a machine gun in the state of Tennessee. You cannot have a sawed-off shotgun in the state of Tennessee. You cannot have brass knuckles in the state of Tennessee, but you can be 18 years old and go out and buy an AR. That doesn't make sense to me. I think that permitless carry that Governor Lee inflicted upon all of us is a bridge too far, and it needs to be repealed. And I'm not the only one who feels that way. Governor Haslam felt that way. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation asked Governor Lee not to pass permitless carry. The police chiefs, the Sheriff's Association, business leaders, faith leaders all asked him not to pass permitless carry because they understand that it does not make our communities safer. It makes us less safe. They understand that rolling back decades-long practice of having a basic competency check and a safety check, if you're going to have a gun around your family or my family concealed, is the right thing to do. So we need to make sure that that goes away. We also need to advocate for red flag laws. I'm out of time.
Thank you. And I'll go to Councilman Smiley. Sorry for messed up the order. Okay. I'll go straight to you. Councilman Smiley.
Let's just state the obvious. This governor doesn't care about people. This governor is, let's put it this way. When it came time to sign the permitless carry, although about 60% of Tennesseans said no to permitless carry, this governor goes to the gun manufacturing plant, holds a press conference, and signed the permitless carry bill into law. He was telling all of us that we can go somewhere else. He didn't care. This governor, when it came time to deal with mass school shootings, we just knew that he was going to address gun violence. The only thing that he said was, let's make our schools safer. And I'm actually going to be a hypocrite here. He said, essentially, we're going to talk about arming teachers while he's also talking about teachers don't have the ability to teach the students the curriculums that they learn in school. This governor is a hypocrite. This governor doesn't care about people. Let me tell you what we can do to keep our community safe. We can pass universal background check. We can implement we can implement red flag laws. We can implement mental health screenings. We can completely erode permitless carry. We also need to implement an outright ban on assault rifles. But with my last 5 seconds, we should be investing in proactive programs like the Group Violence Intervention Program, which serves as a proactive way to reduce crime across our state.
Thank you very much. And then part two, and I'll start with Councilman Smiley and get it right this time.
Oh, it's fine. I got
Dr. Martin. Last week, Congress passed the first bipartisan gun legislation in over 30 years that had everything from mental health funding to issues of background checks when it comes to people under the age of 21. What was right about it and what was wrong about it? Councilman Smiley.
First of all, I'm just happy that Congress finally did something that was bipartisan. Let me start there. I think what is right about it is the fact that they understood that gun violence, it's an issue that affects every community. They understood that. That's why they required some background checks. But I'm talking about we need to take it one step further, because we have a responsibility in the state of Tennessee. We have the third highest violent crime rate in the country. That is absolutely awful. We take it one step further by requiring waiting periods. What the studies show is that when you implement waiting periods, folks who are anticipating committing suicides, that significantly decreases. When you implement waiting periods, those folks who are committing crime in acts of passion, that significantly decreases. That's how you reduce violent crime. That's how you reduce gun crime, by thinking proactively, putting laws in place that protect people.
Thank you very much. Dr. Martin?
Yeah, so I think it's great that Congress paid some attention to this issue. I'm sorry that it took the deaths of so many children again to get them to act. And, I think in terms of what we can do here in the state of Tennessee, we talked about limiting access to assault rifles. We talked about red flag laws. We've talked about getting rid of permitless carry. Let's talk about another reason that I think violent crime happens in the state of Tennessee, and that's because of poverty. And we have to invest in our communities to give folks options so that they don't feel compelled to go down that life of crime. We need to invest in our schools. We need to invest in access to health care. We need to make sure that we have thriving economies in every neighborhood, not just the rich neighborhoods, not just the wealthy counties and cities, but in every neighborhood, there's a chance for children to succeed and have options.
Thank you very much. Next question, Dr. Martin, and then Councilman Smiley. This has to do with benefits in the state. The state has been criticized in recent years for not being able to deliver temporary assistance for needy families, to families in a timely manner, and also recently for not being able to get unemployment benefits to people seeking that pay. What would you do as governor to fix these problems to make sure that these stoppages don't happen again? Dr. Martin.
The social safety net in the state of Tennessee is abysmal, and it can be changed. I wish they were as proud of fully resourced teachers, access to health care, access to mental health as they are of that big old pile of money that they've accumulated, which, by the way, does not belong to them. It's your tax money. We need to put it to work for people. Let's talk about TANF, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. This is a fund of money that comes to the state every year. It's about $70 million. They've sat on it, and they didn't spend it for the benefit of our fellow Tennesseans who are in need. Instead, they let it accumulate to over $700 million only this year. After lots of public criticism, have they released a fraction of that money? And I think it's because they hear footsteps, Councilman Smiley, because we're coming for them. We're going to hold them accountable for not taking care of Tennesseans. These are the guys in the General Assembly and in Governor Lee who suspended unemployment benefits in the middle of a pandemic when people were in the most need. We need leaders who are going to put people first. I'm a healer in my profession. I want to be a healer in government. We need to get someone who cares about people in that office.
Thank you. Councilman Smiley?
I think one of the first things I would do, and just in my entire makeup, we have to give a damn about people.
Yep.
We're not. We're forgetting those communities. I usually open up one of the talks that I give telling people where I come from. My district, my neighbors would have to walk to the corner store to get their groceries. And oftentimes when they would go to school, their books would be hand-me-downs, second, passed on. The clothes they were wearing were hand-me-downs. And I spent a lot of time talking about the type of governor this state needs. This state needs a governor who understands what it's like to struggle in Tennessee. Not someone who has to pick up a book and learn about the communities, but someone who is intimately familiar with where we're going. What my administration would do differently, we would care about people first. We will make providing assistance to people a priority, and we will make sure that those resources get to those families who are in desperate need of it. Oftentimes, there's a difference between their lights going off, them eating, or them going outside and taking it from someone else.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to turn to the issue of democracy in light of the January 6th hearings that have been out there. This question is from the audience. What will you do if elected to governor to protect democracy in America and in Tennessee? Councilman Smiley, and then Dr. Martin.
We're fighting for democracy right here in the state of Tennessee. This country, our Supreme Court has been intentional taking away rights from women. But that's not the only rights they're coming for. They're coming for rights for our LGBTQIA community. They're coming from rights for same-sex. They're coming from every single civil right that we hold dear. We're fighting for those rights right here. And let me tell you how we fix that. We put a person at the top of the ticket that's going to do everything in his power, that's willing to lay it all on the line for every person that calls this state home. From the homeless to the homeowner and every man, woman, and child in between. We have to fight for what we believe in. And if we don't, they will take it from us. In my administration, I'll make you one promise, and it's this. Every single day, I'll wake up and I will fight for you.
Thank you. Dr. Martin?
You know, if you look back at the news reports after January 6th, it wasn't until after that event that Governor Lee admitted that Joe Biden won the presidential election. And I think that when you behave like that, when you don't speak the truth, you are complicit in the big lie. You are complicit in the attacks on democracy that are taking place in our state and in our country right now. And it needs to be spoken against. We have to stand up and do something about it. So what can we do? We must vote. The only way we are going to affect change in this state is by seizing political power and letting people know that the will of the people will be done. We will take care of one another. Right now, we're in the bottom 40s in the entire nation when it comes to registering eligible voters. We're in the bottom 40s in the entire nation when it comes to getting registered voters to the polls. And look, voting laws have been under attack in this state for a long time. We've got gerrymandered maps. We've got limited access to polling places. We've got aggressive voter purging laws. We need to stand up and protect the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And this is a related question. Recent polling shows that just as many Tennesseans believe January 6th was an insurrection as it was essentially not as big a deal as some would say. How do you have that conversation with people who might not believe commentary like the big lie, for example? Dr. Martin.
So here's what I've noticed after traveling all 95 counties, more than 30,000 miles up and down I-40, and meeting with thousands of Tennesseans where they are. There are issues that divide us, right? And we can spend our time focusing on those issues, or we can spend our time talking about the vast majority of issues that we all care about, and that's access to education, healthcare, infrastructure that helps people, products, and information move across Tennessee. That's where we need to be putting our energy. And so, look, I answer divisive issues in a principled way with the facts as I see them, and then sometimes I have to agree to disagree with people, but then I go back and say, we are all Tennesseans. We are all Americans, and we need to focus on these issues together for the sake of our democracy, for the sake of our neighbors.
Thank you. Councilman Smiley?
We have to be okay with having difficult conversations. But for some reason, we shy away from having those difficult conversations. We try to put it off. But if we are ever to get better as a society, we have to understand that we have differences, but we have to be willing to talk about it, but ultimately be focused on moving our communities forward. Every single day I wake up and I have to deal with difficult issues. I tell people all the time I have to work with a former fundraising chair for Donald Trump in Shelby County to move our communities forward. How do we have those conversations with folks promoting the big lie, the big steal theory? We do it directly. We do it head on. We tell them the truth, and then we keep it moving. Because if we don't keep it moving, government will continue to treat marginalized communities as if we are different. My job as an elected official is to provide for the general welfare of all the people that call this state home. And my administration will speak truth, have those difficult conversations, but we ultimately will move forward together.
Thank you. As we move near the conclusion, this is one of your all favorite questions, which is, what are the one or two places you tell visitors they must see in order to experience Chattanooga the way that you enjoy it most, an attraction or a restaurant? Councilman Smiley and then Dr. Martin.
For me, I'm ready to go. I know my team is ready to go. We're trying to go to the Peach Cobbler Factory. Sorry, I like to eat, y'all. Don't judge me. And then, as a former athlete, just being on the campus. Being on the campus of UTC is absolutely great for me. It brings back memories, some not so good. Seeing some former collegiate players from Memphis play here, it's been great for me. But my team is ready to go to the Peach Cobbler Factory. I'm sorry, we're ready.
Thank you. Dr. Martin.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So we had a loose tradition for several years in our family, and that was on the last day of school for the kids. We'd pile a bunch of folks in the car and drive down to the Tennessee Aquarium. And I know that's a super touristy answer, but man, we had a good time there. We have lots of memories there. We were actually talking about it this afternoon as we drove past it. One of the other things I love about this city is the access to the amazing parks that you have. We've had several events and parks along the river, and it's a beautiful, beautiful space. It's a great investment that your community has made, and I think it's a model for the rest of the state.
Thank you very much. And now this is the final question before concluding remarks. Name a person who has had a deep influence on your life, and what's one lesson you could share with the audience? Dr. Martin and then Councilman Smiley.
I've shared this story before, and I'd like to do it again because it's very powerful and influential to me. My maternal grandmother, May, has had a huge impact on my life. She's probably watching online tonight. She's in her early 90s. She was widowed in the 1970s when she had 2 teenage girls at the house. She had not been in the workplace before, but you got to do what you got to do to eat. She went out and got a job selling shingles for the GAF Corporation. Now, that was a challenging time for a woman to enter the workplace. It was a challenging time for a woman to enter that profession, but she did it. She, brushed off all that had been dished to her and went out and had a successful career. And I thought she was a great example to my mom and my aunt, who saw that resilience. I think she continues to be a great example for my 3 girls to see, you just keep going if you take a hit. You got to be strong, pick yourself up, and keep going.
Thank you very much. Councilman Smiley.
On the first Tuesday of April this month, we had a long council meeting, and I go home at the end of the council meeting about 7 o'clock. I take my dog out, and I drive about 7 miles to the VA hospital. I get on the elevator to the 2nd floor, and I go to room 228, and I sit in a chair, and in the bed laying next to me is the other gentleman with my name, J.B. Smiley Sr. He laid in the hospital bed with wires all in him, and I asked him, "Father, how are you doing?" He said, "Don't be asking me no questions, son." I said, "Why not?" He said, "Why aren't you on the road? Because your old man is going to be okay. As long as I know that you're out there fighting for us all, I'll be fighting to be here." While this man was laying in the bed near death, he told his baby boy to go be about business, put on his working boots and get to work. I tell that story about my father because he's the toughest person that I know. He grew up on H.M. Haney's plantation in Jonestown, Mississippi. He didn't have an opportunity to use an indoor restroom until he turned 18. He took a bath in the number 3 tub. That means you go outside, get the water out the well, pour it in the tub. That's his life. And he fought every single day to put me in a better position. So I can't think of any other person that I would want to live my life to simply just make him proud.
Thank you very much for sharing that. And before we get to concluding statements, just a reminder to the audience, both here at University of Tennessee, Chattanooga, and on live stream, that July 5th is the deadline to register to vote for the August 4th primary election. July 15th is the start of early voting, and of course, August 4th is Election Day. Let's start with Councilman Smiley. You have 90 seconds for your concluding statements.
I will try not to use it all. First of all, thank you all for being here. Good Doc, thank you as well.
Yes,
you all have a choice today. You have a choice, and that choice could change the trajectory of this party and this state. Choice is not necessarily between myself and Dr. Martin. The choice is, who do you believe has the best shot at beating Bill Lee? Who do you believe that can implement the laws? Who do you believe will go out there and fight for you every single day? I will tell you this. I believe the state of Tennessee deserves someone who's competent, compassionate, but also someone who will keep people at the forefront of every decision. Tennessee deserves a governor who understands what it's like to struggle in Tennessee. Tennessee deserves someone who understands government, who has a history of getting things done with both Democrats and Republicans. Tennessee deserves a governor who will make sure that unconstitutional laws never leaves the General Assembly, but if it does, will have enough courage to veto those particular bills. That's what my administration is about. My administration is about putting people before anything else, level the playing field for every person who calls Tennessee home. If that sounds good to you, this is your campaign. Again, I'm Councilman J.B. Smiley Jr., and with your help, I will be the next Democratic nominee for governor. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Councilman. Dr. Martin.
Yeah, again, Councilman, thank you. These forums sharpen us.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate the chance to be up here with you. Look, we all have compelling stories to tell, but we need more than a compelling story to get 400,000 more votes in this election to beat Governor Bill Lee. And the way you do that is with a vision that includes everyone. And that's a vision that we've put together on this campaign. And that vision is informed by visiting every single corner of the state, all 95 counties, 30,000 miles up and down the road, meeting with thousands of Tennesseans where we are. You know, people ask me all the time, what is the thing you have learned, the biggest lesson from entering into politics? And I tell them, it's that we have so much more that unites us than that which seeks to divide us. I've spent my professional career in service to others, helping with healing. And you know, there are lots of different types of service. Look, what makes Governor Bill Lee a failure is not that he hasn't been in politics his whole life. What makes Governor Bill Lee a failure is not that he hasn't been climbing a political ladder. What makes him a failure is that he doesn't care about the people he is charged to serve. And so I'm going to be proud to be a part of holding him accountable. And look, in this campaign, we are so proud that, you know, not only have we earned the respect of people in my sphere of influence, in the medical community, but we've been able to earn the respect and appreciation of people in the political community. And I'm talking about numerous leaders in the General Assembly, the folks that we're going to be collaborating with to make change happen in the state of Tennessee. And I'm talking about folks like Representative Antonio Parkinson from Memphis, the chairman of the Democratic Black Caucus. I'm talking about Chairman Vincent Dixie. I'm talking about Gloria Johnson and others. Please check out our campaign and give us a look. It's martin4tn.com. We'd love to earn your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's give a round of applause to Dr. Jason Martin and Councilman J.B. Smiley. Gentlemen, you're welcome to leave the stage. And at this time, we'd like to call Meg Gorman and Sandy Casey to the stage for the second part of our forum.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is the second part of tonight's forum with the University of Tennessee system here in Chattanooga and the USA Today Network Tennessee. This is for the Congressional District 3 candidates. Congressional District 3 is in southeast Tennessee, as well as parts of Tennessee that are just west of Knoxville, several counties there. And we have on stage two of the candidates of the three who are there. Meg Gorman, who is the Democratic candidate. She's unopposed in the primary. She is a native Tennessean, a University of Tennessee Knoxville graduate, and she leads a large customer service team at a grocery store. Let's give a round of applause for Ms. Gorman.
Thank you.
Sandy Casey is vying for the Republican nomination. She's a Navy veteran, educator, former worker on a heifer farm, which I found very interesting, and is originally from Ohio. She moved to East Tennessee to work for a software company. Let's welcome Sandy Casey. We invited the incumbent, Representative Chuck Fleischman, to attend. He is a Republican, but he chose not to come tonight. So at this time, we are delighted to have who is here. And with that, we'd like to invite each candidate, starting with Ms. Gorman and then Ms. Casey, to give a 90-second opening remarks.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for having me. My name is Meg Gorman. I'm running to represent Tennessee's 3rd Congressional District. And yes, I am a young woman running as a Democrat in the South, and that means that men twice my age tell me that I should probably put on some lipstick, and it means that when I fill out local candidate surveys, I have to tell them if and which church I attend. I don't know about you, but I don't think that those determine my ability to legislate or lead. Now, I have worked in public-facing jobs my whole life. I've dealt with people at their best and at their worst. And I've learned that leadership means listening to people even if you don't agree with them. It means meeting combativeness with compassion, and it means being responsive, showing up, and following through. I'm running because for too long, there's been a lack of leadership in this district. The incumbent representative, Chuck Fleischman, demonstrated this beautifully tonight by simply not showing up. Again. And on the rare occasion that he does show up, it is not for the people of Tennessee. It is for his corporate donors. That's it. Now, I believe that we all deserve real, meaningful representation by someone whose vote is not for sale. I believe we should be focused on improving the lives of everyday Americans by focusing on things and investing in things like quality public education, affordable child care, and universal health care. And yes, that includes women's reproductive care. Most importantly, I believe that our democracy is more important than any one person or their re-election chances. Chuck Fleischman voted to undermine American democracy and the will of the American people in order to further his political career. I proudly stand here, standing for everything that he does not.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gorman. Now let's move to Ms. Casey, please.
Well, golly, I don't have any prepared remarks, so my name is Sandy Casey, and I am challenging Chuck Fleischman because I agree with everything she said on that point. That may be where our only agreement lies, but it's hard to figure out what to say when I am not a young woman. So I don't like the way that I've been represented, and one of the biggest things that I find most upsetting is our Constitution is being ignored by both Republicans and Democrats. It irks me to no end when I hear politicians in Washington say, it's our job to do this, or it's our job to do that, when the only thing that they have sworn an oath to is uphold and defend the Constitution. If they do that, everything else will work itself out. I'm poorly represented. I expected such when I lived in Maryland, a very blue state, but I'm here in Tennessee, and I was shocked that Representative Fleischman could be fitting in very well in Maryland. And I'll end my remarks there.
Thank you very much. This next round of questions, you'll each get 60 seconds to answer. We'll start with Ms. Casey and then Ms. Gorman, and we'll continue to go roundabout. This past week, the January 6th committee in the House introduced a new witness, Cassidy Hutchinson, who revealed details about what led up to the attack on the U.S. Capitol. Have you been following the hearings, and what are your impressions? Ms. Casey.
I have not been following the hearings, although I did manage to hear her give her hearsay testimony. I don't know why that was even allowed. It wouldn't be allowed in a court of law. So, no, I haven't been following that.
Thank you. Ms. Gorman?
I have been listening to, watching the hearings, and I'm absolutely appalled at what I am hearing. I am hearing that there's egregious behavior. It was known by a massive number of people, and no one internally did anything to stop it. Donald Trump is a criminal, period. And that is my takeaway.
Thank you. Our next question will start with Ms. Gorman and then go to Ms. Casey. President Biden said today that he was calling for the Senate to drop the filibuster to codify abortion rights in light of the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. Do you agree with his position and his approach? Ms. Gorman.
I will start by saying that I normally think anytime someone wants to drop the filibuster, it's because it favors them. In this case, it is about ensuring that people have their basic human rights. That is what is at stake, and I think that that is really the only good reason to actually abolish the filibuster when it is otherwise a partisan move. But I do believe that women have the right to make decisions about their own bodies, and that that is not the government's job. So I do support abolishing the filibuster.
Thank you. Ms. Casey.
I don't mind the filibuster at all, and I do believe that abortion is ageism. A little tiny person is still a little tiny person. An old person is an old person. There are unfortunate circumstances, and I have had friends who have had abortions, and they have dealt with those ramifications for years, whether they made that decision happily at the time or not. So equating Roe versus Wade and abortion and a filibuster are two completely unrelated topics.
Okay, thank you. We're going to start this next question with Ms. Casey and then Ms. Gorman. Last week, Congress passed a bipartisan measure to reform gun laws for the first time in 30 years. What do you think about the legislation? Did it go too far, not far enough, just right? Why or why not? Ms. Casey.
I believe that it went too far. I don't believe that it was bipartisan at all. When you look at recent school shootings, which is what seems to be promoting all of this activity, the flurry of it at the moment, red flag laws won't do anything. This young man in Texas had a history of disturbing behavior, and no one did anything about it. His friends, his family, his schoolmates. He got a gun that he should not have had. There are laws in place for that. Adding more laws only inflicts more regulations on law-abiding citizens. Killing people is bad, regardless of age, so there are laws against that. Had he not been killed in the incident, what would have happened next? The Second Amendment is the Second Amendment. There are already laws in place. That's what needs to be happening when people are committing gun crimes. Those crimes need to be prosecuted, not ignored.
Thank you. Ms. Gorman?
I believe that this did not go far enough. I would also like to mention that I know that you believe that you should be upholding the Constitution, and that when the Constitution was written, they had muzzle-loaded weapons. They did not have high-capacity magazines. They did not have weapons of war like we see them today. Those do not belong out in the public. They do not belong in our schools. And there are people who could have stepped in to do something every single time. And if that is not happening, we must do something. And right now we are failing to do something. I'm glad to see that there is bipartisan legislation that was passed. I'm impressed that we actually had bipartisan legislation, like someone said earlier. But I would like to see it go further. I'd like to see those background checks extend to other age groups and be more advanced.
Thank you, Ms. Thank you. Since Ms. Gorman had addressed you, do you wish to take 30 seconds to respond?
I do. I can appreciate your thoughts on that. However, our society, and this is where the problem is engulfed in a culture of death. When we are trying to kill babies before they're even born, what value of life is there? Life is tough. It's tough for everybody. And you make it tougher when you make bad decisions. So until we can change our mental health, our attitude, and improve our outlook on life, nothing is going to change.
Thank you. This next question will start with Ms. Gorman and then Ms. Casey. A new Associated Press Nork Center for Public Affairs research reported that 85% of American adults say the country is headed in the wrong path, and 79% say the economy is poor. Do you concur with its assessment, and what can you do if elected to Congress to turn this around? Ms. Gorman.
I do not believe that we are necessarily on the wrong path. I do think that we are very divided as a nation, and I think that has been incredibly difficult for all of us. I think that divisiveness is probably why so many people perceive the nation as being on the wrong path. I do acknowledge that there is inflation. The economy has been bad. And I also understand that when COVID hit, we had to make important economic decisions about stimulus checks and understanding that there will be a certain amount of inflation that would occur if we injected money into the economy. I do not think that it was the wrong decision to do that, and I think that making sure that the American people were literally able to survive during a pandemic is absolutely important and the right decision in that situation.
Thank you. Ms. Casey?
Our country is definitely headed in the wrong direction, and because Ms. Gorman answer was so specific. Would you please repeat the question?
Yes, of course. A new Associated Press Nork Center for Public Affairs research reported that 85% of American adults say the country is headed in the wrong path, and 79% say the economy is poor. Do you concur with this assessment, and what can you do if elected to Congress to turn this around?
Our country is going the wrong way. In 1940, the head of the Communist Party said that we would never take this nation under the label of communism or socialism. They would have to make the names lovable, like liberalism, progressivism, and democracy. Right now, our nation is a big, smelly, moldy onion, and I want to start peeling back the government because there is so much overreach where it should not be, that I'm going to get yucky and dirty doing this, but it has to be done. There cannot be more and more and more spending. And it's a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. It cannot be a government telling the people what to do. Every one of you in this room is an intelligent person and can make his or her own choices.
Thank you very much. We'll start with Ms. Casey for this next question and go to Ms. Gorman. President Biden met with NATO recently to reaffirm support for Ukraine against Russia's attack. Do you agree with this further financial and military support overseas? Ms. Casey.
I absolutely do not. We started out with the premise that we had to help Ukraine protect its border where ours is wide open. This is a highly propagandized war if you are listening to anything beyond mainstream media. I said that backwards. If you're only listening to the corporate media, you're only getting one side of the story. If you go to any alternative news sources, you'll find everything is right now on the corporate media as reported by, as reported by, as reported by. If you listen to the actual people of Ukraine being interviewed, you'll find out that the only people helping the actual Ukrainian citizens is the Russian army.
Okay. Ms. Gorman.
I share those feelings of Rachel in the audience, sorry.
So let me repeat the question.
Yes,
President
thank you.
Biden met with NATO to reaffirm support for Ukraine against Russia's attack. Do you agree with this further financial and military support overseas?
I do. I believe that it is incredibly important to show a unified front, if you will. I know that obviously Russia is a great world power, and I know that they are looking at how every other country is reacting. I think it is incredibly important to join forces with our allies to show the support that we can. I would have liked to have seen more support that focused on humanitarian aid and those impacted instead of largely focused on defense spending, military spending. But when it comes down to it, I absolutely do support that.
Thank you very much. And this is related to an earlier comment, but I'd love to learn more about what is the media that you consume and that you believe. Ms. Gorman, and then we'll go to Ms. Casey.
The media that I believe is C-SPAN. And the media that I consume is a little bit of everything. I don't watch cable news, but I do try to balance what I watch. So if I watch something from like MSNBC, I then try to turn on Fox News or some variation of it and watch the same thing. I realize that traveling through a lot of rural Tennessee, it's important for me to understand what people are hearing in their own homes, knowing how to talk about it and knowing how to meet them where they are. And I think that it extends to knowledge, understanding what they're hearing and maybe what concerns they have. It better prepares me to speak with people in a very candid way and address those concerns.
Thank you, Ms. Casey. And what media do you consume and believe?
Well, I do not have broadcast or cable TV, so that's a deliberate decision on my part, and I made that a long time ago. I do read various news reports on conservative sites, and then I go beyond that, because even then some of those are opinions. And then I go to Brighteon.com and see a lot of information there.
Thank you very much. Our next question, we'll start with Ms. Casey and then go with Ms. Gorman. There was a controversy last year regarding Chattanooga being a city that was housing migrant children whose families were seeking asylum. What do you think needs to happen to address border security and immigration reform concerns? Ms. Casey.
That's almost a two-part question. Everyone wants to focus on immigration reform, and I do know that people coming here legally have a very long and challenging path to citizenship. We do have laws regarding our border. I do know that up until 2006, everybody wanted a border wall built until Donald Trump actually started building the wall, and now it's the most horrible thing ever. Walls do work. I had a gentleman write to me and say, walls don't work. And I thought, okay. So there's the difference between living in a pavilion and a house, between a shade and a tent. Walls do work.
Thank you, Ms. Gorman.
I'm not sure if you've ever seen the video of someone sawing through a section of Donald Trump's border wall with a $10 saw from Home Depot, but it is worth a watch. I do not think that we need to be spending money on a border wall. I think that we need to instead use those resources to get aid to the border, to ensure that we have resources for processing. That means attorneys, people who can work and help immigrants with the paperwork, help them navigate the very complex immigration system that the United States has. Ultimately, we need to work on finding a humane, realistic immigration plan. There's no one right answer, and it's going to be multiple pieces that come together on this. I wish I had the perfect solution for you, but I can tell you that the solution is humane and compassionate and does not involve a border wall.
And I want to ask you both next about refugees. The state of Tennessee, the legislature voted a few years ago to sue the federal government to stop accepting refugees. They lost in court, and they are accepting refugees. But what would be your approach, if elected to Congress, to address especially a growing refugee crisis, given the Afghanistan withdrawal and many other hotspots, climate refugees and so forth? Ms. Gorman, and then we'll go to Ms. Casey.
We should absolutely be open to accepting refugees in our communities. These are not people who are here to replace us, contrary to what many media outlets would have you believe. These are people who are coming here so that they can be safe, so that they can be parts of communities, so that they are not fearing for their lives every day. And we absolutely should continue to accept refugees. This shouldn't even be a question. These are people who are fleeing from their own countries, fleeing from countries that are often dangerous, where they're being oppressed. And we should absolutely continue to be a free nation that they can look to and that they can come to and be welcomed with open arms.
Thank you. Ms. Casey, the next question, that question is for you as well. Your position on Tennessee accepting refugees.
Well, I do agree with Ms. Gorman that refugee status is very important. I don't believe people crossing the border illegally are refugees. I've spoken with several refugees over my time in the Navy, and they all have very different stories about how they came to the United States, the type of reception they met, and the assistance they were given, which was just absolutely minimal. Here's a place to live, go forth and conquer. So there does need to be a lot done to address and help refugees here in that status.
Thank you very much. The next few questions are questions that the audience sent to us in the registration. The provost had talked about civil discourse and democracy, and people want to know, what value do you place in educating constituents about the importance of democracy? Ms. Casey and then Ms. Gorman. Again, the question is, what value do you place in educating our constituents about the importance of democracy?
I don't know how Ms. Gorman will answer this, but I've gone to a lot of meet the candidate events, and evidently we are apparently more interested in educating the constituency than they are in being educated, so it's nice to see actual people in the audience regardless of your viewpoint. So you can only do what you can do and not I would love to see educated voters making the decisions based on the choices put forth, not just going with a D or an R.
Thank you very much. Ms. Gorman.
I think that it's not just about educating voters, it's also about empowering voters. That means ensuring that they can actually vote in elections. That means that when they walk in to a polling location, they are not turned away. That means that they do not have to jump through hoops to register to vote. I would actually like to extend just educating to actually having automatic voter registration across the United States. I think when it comes down to it, people see this as optional, when we should be telling people, this is a great responsibility. This is a duty. This is something that you should do. It's something you should want to do. I think we need to extend that into our schools. I think we need to talk about that more within our classrooms, talking about the importance, having people actually join in local events, debates, meeting the candidates so that it's not foreign to them once they're older.
Thank you very much. The next question from the audience addresses the poverty rate in District 3, where 15.3% of the population lives in poverty. There are things that the federal government can do, work with the local community and the state. What would you propose if elected to Congress to address the issue of poverty in this district? Ms. Gorman.
90 seconds isn't enough time to get into all of this, but I will tell you we need to raise the minimum wage. We absolutely need to raise the minimum wage. Right now, it is not enough. It is embarrassing that we have a minimum wage as low as it is. We need to make sure that people are able to afford their medications, that people can afford and access childcare. We need to make sure that people can have affordable housing. So much of it is the cost of everything going up and wages remaining the same. That is a problem. When we talk about we can't pay people more because it's going to make the cost of everything go up, the cost of everything has been going up for a long time now. Wages have remained the same. So I would like to see, at a bare minimum, a hike on the federal minimum wage.
Thank you. Ms. Casey.
I think the minimum wage should, the minimum wage should match the free market. Not every mom and pop store, which our nation was built on, can afford a federal minimum wage. They'd like to, I'm sure. Everyone wants to make more money, but government dictating how businesses should run their own affairs is what leads to part of this problem. Government dictates of how things need to be done make things all or nothing. I know a woman who works with homeless people, and she's in a real bind. Local agencies that are certified, how shall I say you have to have these minimum requirements, and if you don't meet these minimum requirements, you can't do anything. We won't work with you at all. So it's an all or nothing. The free market has got to work, and people need to do what they can within their communities and not have federal involvement in everything.
Thank you. The next question will start with Ms. Casey and then Ms. Gorman. This is a question about the federal budget. The Build Back Better budget stalled. It was passed in the House but went nowhere in the Senate. Did you agree with the concepts that were in there? Was there anything that you could agree with, or how would you do things differently? Ms. Casey.
I started reading The Behemoth, and I learned all sorts of shocking things. Even before, I probably read or skimmed through about 400 pages, and the things that you don't know that you are being taxed on, I was appalled. It's like all these little taxes are built in to build back better. There's not enough actual infrastructure. People talked about roads and bridges earlier. It's not going for that. So I was not in favor of that at all.
Thank you. Ms. Gorman?
Well, I do support investing in infrastructure. I believe in being proactive and continuing to maintain infrastructure instead of waiting until it is falling apart so that we can fix it at a far greater cost. I think having proactive measures and looking forward will save us money in the long run. We will not have bridges that are falling apart over in West Tennessee, and that's when they get repaired. So I think that is an important investment. I would like to see human investment as well. That means covering things from childcare to healthcare to lowering prescription drug prices, all of it. There's a difference between spending and investing, and it seems like not everyone understands the difference there. But I think that we see when we invest in Americans, we see a return on that investment. We see a greater economy in the future. We see a more productive generations.
Thank you very much. This next question is on issues of climate change. We'll start with Ms. Gorman and then Ms. Casey. Today, the Supreme Court released a ruling that said that the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, did not have the authority to regulate in the way that was perceived to achieve President Biden's climate goals. If you were elected to Congress, what would you do, if anything, to address the issue of greenhouse gases and climate change?
Of course. So I think that we need accountability. We have been fed these lies saying that, we need to produce more oil. We need to be able to frack freely. These things are short-sighted. They do not factor in the impact, the human devastation that is not even far away. It's in the near future. And we are acting selfishly. We are not thinking of future generations. We need to have something like the Green New Deal. We need to make sure that we are exhausting our resources so that we can preserve what we do have left of our planet for future generations. And that is a moral obligation that I believe we all have. And anyone who does not agree with that should do a little bit of soul searching.
And Ms. Case, again, the question is, what, if anything, would you do if elected to Congress to address the issue of climate change?
Well, I do believe in man-made climate change, but I don't believe that us driving around in our cars, I don't believe us turning our air conditioning on is the source of that global warming. I believe in HAARP, look that one up, please. And there is geoengineering. Go to Geoengineering Watch and see what is being done to our climate intentionally. So and I do agree that all energy forms need to be exploited, including wind, including solar, but I know that fossil fuel is also very efficient, which is why it still is in the lead.
And in a related question, we'll start with Ms. Casey and go with Ms. Gorman. The head of the Tennessee Valley Authority has talked about the future of energy. We're expected to see a doubling of demand in electricity by 2050. The coal plants are going to be shutting down by 2035. Nuclear is the biggest part of the portfolio for TVA. What should TVA do to ensure that people's energy demands get met? Ms. Casey.
Golly, I have not really thought about this at all, I'll be honest. I am not opposed to nuclear energy in the least. We have several nuclear plants in Ohio that have produced power. There were several in Pennsylvania that produced power while I was stationed there. I know that TVA does a lot of good work. They keep all of Tennessee safe and dry, so that is about honestly all I can address on that issue.
Thank you. Ms. Gorman?
So it is long overdue that those coal plants are shut down. I'm not sure if the people in here are familiar, but actually East Tennessee is home to one of the largest coal ash sludge spills in the history of the world. It was devastating, and there are people who are still getting sick and dying because of the impacts, because of having to clean it up without proper protection. And so even removing the direct environmental impact, looking at the impact on communities, looking at places like Claxton, which is not far from where Ms. Casey lives, which is a community center with a park that is covered in a layer of coal ash where children play on coal ash covered equipment. This is dystopian. So I support nuclear for short-term goals as a bridge to get us to where we need to be.
Ms. Casey, since you were addressed, do you want to take 30 seconds to respond?
No.
Okay. Well, we are in our final two questions before concluding remarks. I want to thank both candidates very much for taking the time. It takes effort and sacrifice to be here, so I'm so grateful for you to be here on the stage of University of Tennessee, Chattanooga. So the next one is perhaps a little bit unfair for people who are here, but still I'm going to ask you anyway, which is, what are one or two of your favorite places, one or two, that you tell visitors they must see in order to experience Chattanooga or Southeast Tennessee?
Is this me first?
Yes, let's go with Ms. Gorman and Ms. Casey.
So I'm going to say here in Chattanooga, one of my favorites, and this has been going on since I was a little kid and we first came here, but Nightfall happens on Friday night. It is a free outdoor concert series. It is family friendly, dog friendly. There are food trucks, there's beer, and there's excellent music. You see people from all different communities attending, and I think it's a really beautiful thing and a great representation of what Chattanooga is like. Separately, a place that we saw on the campaign trail actually last cycle, I ran in 2020 as well, and we stopped by a place called Legends and Lore. I believe it was, if it was not in Madisonville, I think it was close. And it is a lore-themed pizzeria, and they're known for their pickle pizza, which I didn't have to be talked into too much. My campaign manager did, but ultimately we both absolutely loved it, and it was absolutely wild. I would totally recommend it for anyone traveling in that area.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gorman. Ms. Casey, same question to you. One or two places you'd recommend here?
Yeah, this is a tough one because this is your stomping ground, whereas it's a 2-hour drive for me. So it's like a get here, do what I need to do, and head back before I die of exhaustion. However, the few times that I have come down, I am impressed with the beauty of the county, and recently I went up to Signal Mountain, and that was just stunning. And you would think a rock is a rock, but the rocks in this county are different than rocks in another county. I know that sounds really silly, but the natural beauty of Hamilton County is stunning.
Thank you very much. And is there any particular place in your hometown that you'd recommend people going to?
Ruby's Diner in Oliver Springs.
All right. Thank you. The next question will start with Ms. Casey and then Ms. Gorman. This is the final question before concluding remarks. Name a person who has had a deep influence on your life, and what's one lesson you could share with the audience? Ms. Casey.
Well, I'm going to sound like Councilman Smiley because my dad also was a huge influence in my life. He was a Navy veteran. He was a Cleveland, Ohio fireman for 37 years. He was also a substitute history teacher in the Cleveland school system, and he believed in doing the right thing, standing up, being honest. If you're going to make a mistake, own it, and then take the course correction to move on if you make a mistake. Do your research, do your best to be right, definitely be honest. What more can I say? I adored the man, and he taught me a lot. He took me everywhere when I was little. He exposed me to a million things in the Cleveland area, and I miss him a lot.
Thank you very much for sharing that, Ms. Casey. And again, Ms. Gorman, name a person who's had a deep influence on your life, and what's one lesson you could share with the audience?
Sure. So instead of just a lesson, I guess I'll share a story. When I was in 6th grade, I staged a walkout because my PE teacher, who was a man, regularly told the boys in the class to stop running like girls and doing girly push-ups. So I staged a walkout, all the girls left, and I ended up in the principal's office. That night when I got home and sat down at the dinner table, I told my parents, and they were not upset. They both told me how proud they were, because that's the kind of people they are. So I would say my parents, they're actually here right now, the guy in the purple shirt and the woman in the black shirt. But they're wonderful. You should meet them.
Thank you so much again to our two candidates. Before we go to concluding statements, just a reminder that the deadline to register to vote is Tuesday, July 5th. Early voting starts on July 15th, and Election Day is August 4th. So let's start with Ms. Casey and then Ms. Gorman. You each have 90 seconds for closing remarks.
Well, the one last thing that I'll add about my dad's story to me is life is tough, grow some thick skin. Just move on. Life is not fair. And boy, oh boy, running for an office at this level for the first time, I've had to use that thick skin that I've gotten over all of the years. I know you have too.
Oh, yeah.
So, but it takes courage, and I am so honored to have met so many good people in the 10 counties in this district and see that each county has its own personality, its own beauty. You can almost tell where you are just by driving and talking to the people. So I don't know if I answered that correctly or not, but that's where I'm going to end. I'm just happy to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Casey. And Ms. Gorman, please.
Thank you, and thank you again for having me tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to answer questions from you, from the community. And tonight, I want to leave you with some special words about the importance and spirit of debate. Now, these are not my words. The debate process is very, very informative. It's something that people can look to. Debates really are what the Founding Fathers wanted when they talked about the Constitution. Now, without context, those words don't really sound like a whole lot. But those were the words spoken by Chuck Fleischman at one of the last debates that he attended. That was in 2012. If you believe that we deserve a congresswoman who will actually show up for the people of East Tennessee, join my campaign. Help me bring real, meaningful representation back to Tennessee 3. Thank you for having me tonight. You can sign up to volunteer and donate at meg2022.com.
We want to thank very much, again, our candidates, Meg Gorman, who's a Democratic candidate for District 3, U.S. House of Representatives, and Sandy Casey, who is a Republican candidate for Tennessee District 3. We want to thank University of Tennessee System, and especially University of Tennessee Chattanooga. I'm very pleased with Gina Stafford here, who has been the wonderful timekeeper.